I wouldn't. Plain and simple. I wouldn't. You play your character. How do you want that character to? How do you want the character to react to the world? You're playing your character. It's your character. There's. I can't tell you how to develop them. It's your character. I control the world. Events, things will happen to the character. But it's up to the player to play him and determine how that character is going to develop. I only control the events. The character controls the outcome of them. I mentioned Glenn's character before that was really, really vain. Glenn did that. I didn't do that. I didn't make him go through the 5 steps or whatever it was. He went through when that happened to the character. I didn't tell Glenn to do that. He did that. That was him developing the character. I think now there's a little bit too much focus on mechanics as character development. Mechanics have nothing to do with character development. Now, mechanics can affect a character and can cause you to develop a character a certain way, but that's up to the player. It's in that aspect too. Players have to be, they have to be willing to be malleable. They can't. Again, you can't railroad it. It just won't be any fun. If you're determined that my character is going to be this way no matter what happens to it. I had a player that he was running a dwarven fighter and he sucked. That character, it was random die rolls, granted, but he sucked every time he went into a fight. He just got his ass kicked until he got a dagger, at which point he kicked ass. So, but he was determined. No, he was going to be the quintessential dwarven character, and he was going to carry, axes and hammers, and he refused to carry a knife at all. And he constantly got his ass beat. And eventually, the player just went, you know what? I'm going to go with it. And the character stopped being a fighter. Actually, he became a thief. He picked up knives. Forego his axes and hammers, and the character was awesome after that. But it was just the way the die rolls worked out, But and sometimes it happens. It wasn't anyone forcing it any particular way. It was just the way it happened. Then eventually, he just kind of rolled with it, and it let the character develop. You've seen progress in the character then. Again, that's players control that. That's the authority the players have over their characters.
Oh, absolutely. It's just like in life. Your character is more of your personality as opposed to your physical state of being. And in regards to the character sheets themselves, in a way, they show what your character can do, but not who your character can be. And I think those are two very different things, especially when considering what these people, your players, have constructed. And I definitely think that putting a character through something from week to week or developing that character's emotional state of being is all important. It doesn't have to reflect in a plus in this or a minus in this. It doesn't have to be, a physical change. It's just who that character is inside. Take a Warforged, for example. I've got a rather experienced player playing a Warforged right now, and never done it before, had never been a Warforged, and had never been a monk, so didn't really know what he was going into, but wanted it to be that way. Wanted to come in knowing nothing. So that way, when he started playing every single week, would literally develop his character as he developed as a player. So it's definitely interesting to see development. And if you stick it out, you shouldn't always expect, a plus in strength if you take a lap every day. That's not necessarily it. It's just that your character enjoys to be a more healthy, upbeat individual as opposed to the others who are at the tavern chugging down ale. I think the characters should be developed from the bottom up, first and foremost. We'll start there. And at the bottom, even before they start to consider who they want to play within this world, they need to know about that world so they can create something proper within it. Now, once they actually start building this character, selecting races and classes and purposes and goals and expectations, They have to be logical and realistic about what they can do. I have seen innumerable amounts of people come in the game, I want to be lawful good. But all of a sudden, when the rich mayor has, a golden scepter sitting on the table, off they go with it. You're not lawful and you're not doing something good. So you have to be able to actually accomplish what you set out to do. And like a game master, it goes the same way. If you set unrealistic goals and then get disappointed because they don't get met, what are you to do about that? It's not your player's fault for doing that. And it goes back to them as well. If they set unrealistic goals for their characters and then their characters don't develop how they see them, they feel not as great or grandiose as they planned, then their character kind of falls flat and they want to make something new. But most importantly, I think that if I do advise players to do something, I advise them to stick with it a little bit, develop your character over time. Because just like in life, who you are as an individual changes over time. And in game time, sometimes it moves a little quicker. You have more opportunities to change the face and the purpose of that character. So you should take advantage of those. If you make one misstep, it's not going to destroy your entire character. It kind of shows a little bit of that character's inner thoughts or who that character really is inside. So I think the player and the character kind of go hand in hand with each other. You're both part of one another, and you both change as time goes on.
I don't disagree with that. I think we said pretty much the same thing, except I don't know about advising a character to have the best interest of the game. No, play the best interest of the character. Just accept it. If and I've done this. I played a Dwarven Berserker before. I had I knew full well the consequences of that my actions were going to bring. And in the next session we played, I had a new character. I'm okay with that. That was the point. If you play a character that go against the party's interest of the other characters in the game, and they act on it, that's part of the game world. So you're going to have characters like that, but just don't be, that player doing that has to realize that that's part of doing what he wants to do. If you're determined to play an evil character, okay, accept the consequences that you're ultimately going to fail, because that's likely what's going to happen. Especially if we're talking about D&D and the game is run correctly, yeah, you're going to fail. So you're not going to run a group of characters. You're not going to run easily with them, or you have a very small chance of that happening. In the 22 years of my game, I've had one player play an evil character successfully within the campaign. It's not something that's easy to do, not if the game is ran correctly. So again, it's not. I don't. Like I said, I wouldn't advise them to develop a character. How to develop their character. If a player came to me and went, and I've had this happen, where our player was playing a character that was in this case it was a druid, and actually I take that back. He was playing a fighter, but the character wasn't. It wasn't the character concept that he was trying to get across. And we sat and talked more about what the character concept was, and the character became a druid. And that if a lot of my players have had they determined over the course that they've played with me for any length of time, they all have kind of like an iconic character, or a lot of them have. That became his. If you ask any of the players that played when he did, over all the different characters he remember. Because once he made that change, after we talked about it, and he made that change, he fell right into that character and just played him. It was perfect. So again, that's kind of up to the player, and you just have to be advice-wise, you have to be willing to just go with what happens. Even if your character was you were trying to recreate the Green Arrow, you get your arm lopped off. Well, roll with it. Interesting enough, that happens to the character, at least in a certain alternate future. But you roll with it. If you or you don't. Some players can't. Some players will go, that's it. They're too fixated on mechanics. That's unfortunate. but you run into that.